This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. You can find out more about me at stacyontheright.com. You can go to afr.net, and you can go to onenewsnow.com to get all of the best news and information syndicated all over the country. I think they have 800 stations that carry our news, and that's a ministry of American Family Association. So, get the best news from the best sources. And thank you so much for making your home at American Family Radio. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome a good friend of mine, Jeremy Smith. Jeremy is the director of ministry at Faith Ascent Ministries. The website is faithascentministries.com. His life was miraculously changed when Jesus rescued him in 1996. And since then, he's been passionate about helping the non-religious and religious to think through and seriously consider what they believe, why they believe it, and why it matters. Since 2010, Jeremy has been serving Faith Ascent as one of the founding leaders. Now, he studies select topics related to Christian apologetics, evangelism, philosophy through Biola University in La Mirada, California, and Covenant in St. Louis. He's a member of the Christian Apologetics Alliance, the Missouri Apologetics Network, and St. Louis's Reasonable Faith chapter. He also serves as corporate chaplain at Cordell and Cordell. So, Jeremy, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Stacy.
All right, let's talk about this. You run something called Faith Ascent. And Faith Ascent, one of its ministries, is a camp, a summer camp called Base Camp. What is it?
Yeah, Base Camp is our flagship event, and it's essentially a lot like other summer camps aimed at Christian teenagers. There's fun, there's fellowship, but most importantly, it's intense preparation for the challenges, and I would say also the opportunities that Christians are going to be presented with in a college setting.
Okay, so when you say college setting, the first thing that was when I first heard about your camp years ago, before our kids ever went, someone said, "Oh, it's at Lindenwood University. They sleep overnight in the dorms, and it's a lecture-based camp." And the first thing I thought was, lecture-based? Why would my kids enjoy that? And as you know, because you know all three of our kids, they don't just enjoy it. They love it. What is it about a lecture-based camp that kids love and come back to year after year and actually are upset when they can't come back anymore because they've aged out?
Well, I think, part of the reason for that, Stacy, is because in youth ministry, in church, kids they're taught what to believe, which is important and right, and they should be taught that. But I don't think a lot of attention and energy is spent teaching students, young people, why they believe. And so at Base Camp, one of our values is we believe that good questions deserve good answers. So we try to pinpoint, those questions that young people are asking, the questions that they're being asked by their non-Christian friends, and we try to link up the right speakers at the right time to answer the right questions. So I think kids just love it when they're given extra information, extra evidence, extra resources from top-notch speakers, experts, etc., to really think through not just what they believe, but, hey, why is this even believable?
Okay, so Jeremy, you hit the nail on the head there, because a lot of parents, their ears have perked up. They're like, wait a minute. So these are the questions that after church a kid asks. Or worse, you get your kid in the car, you pick them up from school, or you pick them up from their other summer camp, and they ask you this really hefty theological question that you maybe don't know the answer to. I know for me, I don't know all of the answers to the theological questions. I just believe like my life depends upon it. But there are times where the kids have asked me questions and I've been stumped and we've had to research it together. But when you're in the car and you're driving along at 55 or 70 miles an hour and your kid asks you this question and you can't answer, it kind of makes them feel like you believe for no reason, or their questions can't be answered, and why should they believe it? And your camp takes all of that and blows it away, because the speakers are so knowledgeable and they're unstumpable. There are no theological or Bible-based questions or scientific questions that kids can ask that your speakers, a wide array of people from lots of different backgrounds, they can't answer. There's nothing to stump them.
Yeah, and so I'm with you, Stacy. I'm not always the best guy to ask tough questions to, theological questions, scientific questions, historical. I've spent some time studying, but I know enough to know that I don't know that much. And so we do try whenever we can, to link up the right experts to answer these questions. And while I'm sure that a lot of our speakers would say there are lots of questions that are hard to answer, the good news is that, there aren't any questions that apply to fundamental, foundational Christian doctrines that can't be answered well when you really look at the science and the philosophy and the history. I mean, we always tell students that Christianity is unique amongst all the different worldviews and that it's actually true. And because it's true, we don't have to be afraid of things like science and philosophy and history. I mean, Christianity corresponds to reality at every turn.
It does. So I didn't ask you, and I want to make sure we get this out on the interview. What is Faith Ascent's mission? Why does it exist?
Yeah, well, you alluded to it, but I think that our mission, it's a long mission, but let me sum it up. We exist to reduce the number of professing Christian teenagers abandoning their beliefs in college and then disengaging from the church. And again, one of our values is just making sure that young people are leaving home equipped with good reasons for the hope they have in Jesus, which is a reference to 1 Peter 3:15, but also that they're being connected with campus ministries wherever they land.
So, and you helped our daughter find Christian Campus Fellowship on her college campus, and we were really excited about that. And it was as if you had kind of opened like a little mini family for her, because they met us on campus on move-in day in her room. The husband and wife team showed up in the room, and they were they were talking to her, and I can hear, because we're in this tiny freshman dorm room, and I heard them use a little phrase that my dad used to use all the time, and I thought to myself, okay, God, you're trying to settle me down, because I'm over here like I'm on the bullet train to Basket Caseville, and these two people come in and start talking to her like they've known her forever, and she has interfaced with them. Like it's been a process where she's been easing in, but they've been there and available to her. And this couple is not unique to our daughter's campus. They're all over the country, just waiting for our Christian kids to appear at the campus so they can welcome them in and help them navigate.
Yeah. And by the way, your story is just one of several. And we didn't realize this when we first started in 2010, but after a couple of years, we came to the very, very important conclusion that training before college is just part of the process. Mm-hmm. If these students are not connected with Christian community wherever they land, we're really missing an important piece of the puzzle. And so we want to make sure that we're just kind of stacking the deck, Stacy. In your daughter's case, we got to read on her, her Christian tradition, what she was going to be studying, where she was going to land, and we tried to give her about 4 or 5 options of different campus ministries and even healthy churches that were near the college. So I'm so glad that she took advantage of that, because community, as I'm sure you know, is 75% of the battle at that age. We can equip them for days, and we should, but we've got to make sure that they are connected with a family of believers wherever they land.
So, Jeremy, you hit the nail on the head there, and I want to go into the results that you've seen, like what parents say about it, what kids say about it at Faith Ascent, because I've talked about your ministry on air before. I always, if I encounter someone who says, my kid has questions I can't answer, I always say, oh, well, there's a camp for that, and I always tell them what it is, because I'm like, this is something that helped us so much. I want other people to know that you don't have to battle this on your own. And you're right about the community. For my husband and I, we're plugged in at church to the degree that we want to be plugged in, because we're older and we have, each other and we have kids. But when you're a teenager and you're in a new environment like college, or even if you're still at home in high school, if you don't have believers around you, it's easy for the culture to suck you in. So what can you tell us about what people say about Faith Ascent and what impact it's had for their kids?
Yeah. So people are usually in 2 different categories here. Some people want the heartwarming, emotionally sort of driven stories, and we have a lot of those. Other people really want the hard data. So I'll kind of start with the stories quickly and just say that almost every student that we've ever interviewed or surveyed says that, Base Camp was one of the first times they were in an environment where questions were not just welcomed, but they were really answered well by qualified experts. besides that, they feel like it's a very safe opportunity to wrestle with these big doubts that they can't always describe or articulate without fear of some kind of repercussions in youth group or at home. And that's not to say that youth groups and homes aren't safe, but let's just face it, it's a little harder to talk to your parents and your youth pastor about your doubts than it is to talk in a group where you have some degree of anonymity. So those are some of the stories that we hear. They love it. Oh, and they love the denominational diversity. We hear that over and over. You know, students from lots of different Christian traditions, theologically conservative, but very different traditions coming together and seeing that, oh my goodness, we agree on so much more than we ever knew. And I can't wait to meet people like you in college. So that's sort of, the emotionally driven side. And then, of course, there are some students that, maybe weren't sure what they thought, and this was the game changer for them. That one doubt, that one question was finally answered, and they felt confident. So that's the one hand. Those are some of the stories that we're hearing. But the hard data shows us, and this is based on our most recent and most conservative estimates, after 10 years, over 85% of our base camp graduates still love Jesus and are still connected with Christian community after 4 years of college. And that's almost 100 students now. And we get about 100 a year, but because of the ages, that's the amount of graduates that we currently have. We're praying and hoping that trend continues. God's in charge of that stuff, but we like to think that we're part of this process. And there's something special that the Holy Spirit is doing through this real intense intellectual preparation.
Okay, so let's have a little bit of tough question and answer round. Do atheists attend the camp?
We have had students that attended the camp that were not believers, but that was after a long talk with parents and the students, too, to make sure that they asked good questions, but they weren't, divisive or adversarial. Our camp is geared toward professing Christians, and there are lots of good places for seekers to come in and kind of peek over the fence. We say that base camp is more for professing Christians, but at the same time, we have had some unbelieving students. And, when it comes to our surveys, Stacy, every year we get a few students that maybe mom and dad think they're Christians, but on their surveys, and these are anonymous surveys, but they'll tell us, I'm not a believer, or I'm not sure where I'm at. And we see it over and over and over, students saying when they first come in, I'm not a believer, and then they leave and say, I believe that I can accept this information, and I'm ready to take those next steps. I feel like I can make a commitment here that I can respond to God tugging at my heart, and that's super cool. But yeah, to answer your question, we've had a few non-believing students, and they would say they're probably agnostic, maybe atheist, but yeah, as long as they're there to learn and listen and ask good questions like all the other students, they're welcome. But we do.
Yeah, I love that.
Christian.
I love it. I love that because that shows that you're not afraid to have a kid who that's a kid who they'll need a little more, and you're not afraid to tackle that. Okay, so another quick question. What about the fun? What kind of fun do they have? Now, I know the answer to this because my kids are always texting me the fun parts. But tell the listeners where's the fun in this whole thing? It's lectures. They get to eat lunch and breakfast and dinner. But what else?
Yeah. So the most fun that they have is writing a 20-page essay at the end of camp. Just kidding. Yeah. So we are known for being very lecture heavy. I mean, we're doing almost 4 lectures a day with panel discussions and small groups and breakouts. But students have lots of free time, too. So we try to mix it up. They hang out in the dorms, which we think is a really good sort of, it's exposure to college life, right? It's inoculation of sorts. They get a feel for college. So they do spend time in the dorms. It's supervised, but, they can kind of do whatever they want. They want to play foosball, eat some snacks, watch a movie, play guitar, whatever. So that's a lot of fun. But in addition to that, we have, access to the gym. They can play ultimate frisbee. They can shoot some hoops. There's a volleyball net outside. I mean, we really let them kind of run around the campus, and it's kind of controlled chaos. We have people there to supervise, but we also let them feel like they're in a college environment. And so in between lectures, in between meals, they have a lot of time to do fun stuff that would be accessible to any student on a college campus.
So I guess what I would say is, because so I want to reiterate, if you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with Jeremy Smith. His ministry, Faith Ascent Ministries, runs Base Camp. It's their main event of the year. It's located in St. Louis. You also have a second Base Camp that happens in Phoenix, Arizona. Am I right about that one?
You are, yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up because it was 2 years ago, we decided that we wanted to have representation a little further west and in the future, hopefully a little further east. So, yeah, we actually have a summer camp in Phoenix, Arizona, and that one, by the way, takes place July 19th through the 22nd. You can find out about that on our website, but that's at Prescott Pines. It's a nice campsite there, a little further elevated, too, so it's not quite as hot there in Arizona. But, yeah, that's our first endeavor outside of St. Louis, which is super cool. I mean, we did it last year, but this is our first, real camp plant outside of St. Louis, and we're so happy to be coming up to our second year in Phoenix.
So, Jeremy, I already have people in the live stream audiences who are saying, do they do this in Texas? And so I would just encourage everyone to go to faithascentministries.com, find out about the 2 locations where there are currently camps, and look at ways that you can interface with Jeremy and his ministry here. It's been a blessing to the Washington household, and I guarantee you won't be disappointed if you look it up and maybe send a kid or 2 or even some grandkids. Check it out online at faithascentministries.com. Jeremy, thank you for joining us today.
It was my pleasure, Stacy. God bless you.
All right, talk to you again soon. We will be back with more, taking your calls at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. More after this.